Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Printed. I'm your host, Vanessa Gomez, and to continue with our department series today, we'll be talking about what is often described as the heart of any publishing house, the acquisitions and editorial departments. To help us explore this, we're joined by two incredible guests, Hazel Millar and Jay Millar, co publishers of Book Hook Press, which is a Toronto based independent literary publisher working at the forefront of contemporary book culture. Since both Hazel and Jay wear many hats in their roles, we're going to also be spending a few minutes talking about what it means to work in an indie press where departments kind of overlap. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and follow the podcast. We have some amazing guests lined up for you for this season that you do not want to miss. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Today's episode is a very special one because we don't have one, but two amazing guests with us today. The first one is one of the co-owners and co-publishers of Book Hook Press. She has been working in the publishing industry since 2009. In addition to her work at Book Hook Press, she is the past chair of the board of the Literary Press Group of Canada and sits on various publishing industry boards and advisory committees. Please, everyone, welcome Hazel Miller to Printed. Hi, Hazel. How are you?
I'm good, Vanessa. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good.
Good.
Well, with us today, we'll also have the other half of Book Hook Press. He currently sits on the board of the Ontario Book Publishing Organization as a treasurer. His side hustle is the Apollinaire Bookshop, an online seller of poetry, literature, and a small press of books you rarely find elsewhere. He is also an author and has published 7 collections of poetry, the most recent of which is I Could Have Pretended to Be Better Than You, New and Selected Poems. And he lives in Ontario with his wife, Hazel Miller. Please, everyone, welcome Jay Miller to Printed. Hi, Jay. How are you?
Hi, Vanessa. I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. Well, are you both ready to get started?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do
Let's do
this.
it.
Okay, perfect. Well, to warm things up, I always like to start with a section that I like to call the What Are You section. So, for both of you, what are you reading, listening to, or and watching at the moment? It doesn't have to be related to books. It can be any movies or series that you like that you're watching at the moment, or any music that you like listening to.
Well, right now let's see. The other day, Hazel and I actually sat down and watched the Before trilogy with Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, which was a lot of fun. We kind of watched the whole thing straight through. Really fascinating to watch a couple of people just deeply in conversation with one another, something that I don't think you experience too much anymore. So we did that. I've been reading some translations. There's one from Sweden that I've been reading, the title of which is eluding me for some reason, but I know it was translated by Saskia Vogel. Um, and what else? I'm actually listening to an audiobook about the history of Iceland. Um,
Well, I yesterday I went to see Kamala Harris here in Toronto on her one, I think, Canadian stop on her book tour. So I was given at the event a copy of her book, 107 Days, and I am listening to probably like many, I still am listening to Taylor Swift's new album. Watching, well, we just started Pluribus, the new show by Vince Gilligan on Apple, which is wild and weird and strange and utterly engaging.
Oh, that's great. Well, from my part, I've been reading to Heart the Lover by Lily King. I just started just a few pages in, but I love the narration so far. I've been listening to Chatter Me, which is a YA book, and it's been like published for a long time, but this is the first time that I'm reading it, and people have recommended, so I'm really enjoying it. And I'm watching at the moment a series that is based on a couple of YA books, Maxton Hall. I think everyone has been waiting for that release, so I'm watching season 2 with my sister when the episode releases each week. So that's great. Thank you so much for that. Now let's start talking a little bit more about you. How did you first get started in the industry? Let's start with Jay.
I got started in it because of my interest in poetry. I was writing poetry and wanted to meet other people. So when I moved to Toronto, I met all of the Toronto small press community, really. Um, I went to a small press fair that was held at Victoria College in Toronto. This would have probably been in 1992. And I met all these people whose work I had discovered in a library at one point, and there they all were standing behind tables, with books that they'd made and were selling them, and it was a really interesting community. And I kind of fell in with them and started publishing my own poetry and other people's poetry in small limited edition chapbooks, and really got involved in that. So that's really sort of the initial beginnings of what we were doing. And then that expanded in around 2004. Um, I was actually working at Coach House Books at the time. I was their poetry editor for about a year and a half. And I got a call from the director's assistant at the festival, and they had all these Danish authors coming for the festival, some of which didn't have books in English. So they were looking for Canadian publishers who would be willing to publish a Danish author in English. And so I took on this project. They didn't want to do it at Coach House, so I asked if it would be okay if I did it with my chapbook imprint. And so that was the first book with a spine that we did. Was a book by a Danish poet named Niels Singso, and his book was called Pencil of Rays and Spiked Mace. Selected poems, and that was kind of what kicked off the more trade version uh, of what is Book Hug Press now.
Oh my gosh, no, that's great. That's a great start in the industry, especially in Toronto. What about you, Hazel? Did you have like a similar path to Jay's?
I had a slightly different path. Of course, being Jay's partner in life as well as business, I was always sort of more on the sidelines in the very early days of the press. I was involved in a completely different career at the time. I come out of the dance world, in fact, and after a career ending injury, I had sort of started a different business that I had been running for about 8 or so years. And in 2009, I decided to sell my shares in that business and was sort of at that, crossroads that we all inevitably find ourselves at some point in life, trying to figure out what I would do next. And at that moment, while I was figuring out what to do, I sort of offered up um, my help to the company more than anything. I just thought it would be kind of a temporary stopover while I figured out what it is I might do next. And I think at that point, Jay was kind of really almost single handedly steering the ship of the press. So I think the offer of some help was met well. And I brought, perhaps some different skills to the table, particularly around maybe marketing and promotion. But I really jumped in not having any real experience in publishing. Definitely a book lover my entire life. Huge admiration and awe, really, for authors, but no understanding of publishing. So I jumped in really kind of like right into the fire and immediately just started. Well, I think because Jay, you were right away like, great, why don't isn't the first task that you do work on the bibliographic metadata for the upcoming season of titles? And I was like, I can do that. I don't even know what bibliographic metadata means, but I can do that. I quickly realized I really don't know what I'm doing. So, but it led to me asking many, many, many questions and kind of just learning as I went. And in many ways, that's been my journey through publishing all along in an industry that is in many ways always in one state of flux or another and is always kind of changing, demanding like kind of new skills of all of us. I've always coined really my job in publishing as kind of my ongoing internship in the world of publishing, as it's started in 2009, and clearly I never did leave and go do anything else. I stuck around. I think it was a happy accident. I like to think now that this is what I was meant to do. It was just kind of a funny journey to discover that.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely,
And I
yeah.
can actually say that, Hazel coming on board and starting to ask all the questions that she asked made me realize how little I knew about what I was doing too. I think both of us sort of came to it out of this love of books
Mhm.
and book culture and, an awe for authorship and things like that. We came to it both in the same way, I think, right? Which is,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I think what you're describing is exactly how most people get into the industry. Like everyone has this love for books. And once they get into the industry, it's like, oh, I actually don't know how books are produced or how the whole process
Yeah,
works.
yeah,
And they start asking all these questions.
yeah.
So, yeah, no, I think that's great. And like a lot of people can relate to that journey that you both had. So we've been talking about Book Hawk Press, and we know that Book Hawk Press is an independent publisher, and you both work across different departments. And I'd love to start there before we get into like the acquisitions and the editorial side of the interview. What does it mean to really be co-publishers in a small press? And how does your work kind of overlap with other departments, whether that's editorial, production, or even the design department?
Well, we definitely have some areas that we absolutely share the workload together on, and that would I think be acquisitions primarily, and then there's definitely areas that we individually kind of take the main lead on and help lead our team through. For me, I think that would really be marketing promotions. I sort of take
Mhm.
the main lead on that and work really closely with the rest of our team on all things related to marketing and promotion. Whereas for Jay, I think it is very much that kind of like um, business manager role of creating all the spreadsheets and budgeting. And while we definitely share the grant writing tasks, I would say that you definitely, Jay, have the lion's share of that. And then together we really administer all the remaining kind of tasks.
Right. All the
Yeah,
administrative tasks like that nobody thinks
exactly.
Yes,
about.
Of which
exactly.
really
Yeah.
there are so many. It turns out.
Yeah, like they can really take
Yes,
a full day and like nobody knows about those
Absolutely. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
tasks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to add on top of that, Jay, about
Just
like your role, what you
yeah.
do daily?
Yes, there is a lot of what we kind of refer to as herding the cats,
Mm,
which is to have all the people that are working on a book. I mean, so many people pick up a book and all they
Mhm.
see is the author's name, and they don't think about
Yeah.
it's like people going to a movie and they don't sit through the credits to see all the people that were involved
mm,
in that movie. It's kind of
Yes.
why we like to
Mhm.
include a colophon at the back that includes the names of the people that worked on the book, whether it's a copy editor, designer, proofreader, etc. But yeah, so yes, I would say that between the two of us, it's very much a share and support um, kind of relationship where some things are done more in the lead by one of us, but then the other comes up beside them and supports them in that for
Mhm.
sure.
That's great. Like it's great that you have like that partnership and like that collaborative
mhm.
environment. And I bet that that also translates to the rest of your team. Like you work, it seems like you work in such a collaborative environment. And I think that's absolutely reflects on how all their indie presses and small presses also work. Like the team
Mhm.
is so small that everyone has to collaborate with one another. So if anyone wants to like apply to a role within a small press, within an indie press, what are some kind of attitudes or like aptitudes that they should have work in a collaborative environment? Doesn't matter which department they are
Yeah.
Yeah,
applying
yeah,
for.
yeah. I would say that it has a lot to do with like being willing to be flexible. Uh, a lot of our team, they do have roles that are kind of specific to their titles, as they're said. But like sometimes something will happen, like 100 orders will come in over the weekend, and somebody needs to help pack those up. So people have to be willing to shift around into different aspects of the business, the tasks that need to be taken care of. Somebody needs to go to the post office sometimes, things like that,
Mhm.
right? So, having something that you are definitely passionate and expertise in, whether that's has to do with data or understanding sales spreadsheets or those kinds of things. Those are all super important, but also being able to, you know, do other things as well becomes a rather important aspect of each person's job.
Yeah, I would just add to that to sort of say just coming in with a flexibility to that a curiosity. One thing that we always hope, for example, that we're able to provide anyone who's a part of our team is at least a clearer understanding of how the publishing house operates as a whole. So rather than one person
spending all of their hours each day on just a single task, whether it's, you know, leading a publicity campaign or, as you said, Jay, like working on the sales data or the biblio data, by encouraging and inviting everyone in to kind of at least lending a helping hand when and where needed in all of the areas, it gives everyone more experience in general with all areas, and a greater understanding and respect again for all that's involved in the making and publication of a book.
Absolutely. I think that's so great because what I've heard, especially for small publishers, indie publishers, is everyone says like you get such a good experience working with an indie publishers because you get to touch every single department. So you get to know what each department does. So if you move on to another job, you know how to talk to the marketing people, you know how to talk to the design people, which is so important. Like you get to communicate like what a specific need your department needs from like another department. I think that's just great. And now I want to focus a little bit more about like the acquisitions and the editorial sides, which is what I want to talk to you both today. First, I want to clarify for anyone that's listening, sometimes an acquisitions editor and the book editor itself, they are two different people. So could you explain for us first, like what does the acquisitions editor take care of, and what's like now what will be considered the book editor takes care of, and how are those different
Sure.
roles?
Sure.
Did you want me to take the
Yeah,
lead
why
in
don't
this
you start
question,
on
Jay,
that
and then
then?
you can jump in? Because the majority of the acquisitions really are kind of led by Jay and I, whereas we don't have an active role in the editorial of a book, we're making the acquisitions based on, first of all, not only our reading of a book or, you know, the other team members that we've brought in to also read and kind of provide feedback, but we've usually at that point already shared it with an editor that we feel would be the right editor to take on that book if we were successful in acquiring it. So when we make an offer to acquire the work, we're always including notes from that editor within our offer. And whenever the opportunity has presented itself, to also have a meeting ahead of time, either with the author, if the editor is available to join us to be a part of those kind of very early conversations, even before we make an offer, and their agent if applicable. So again, it's the acquisition sort of is being led by the two of us, but with a great amount of input along the way, again, from other readers and editorial notes and a possible vision from the editor we hope will be the lead editor on the book.
I think just the difference between it is that acquisitions is us having a vision for the book, a vision for it within the market, a vision for what might happen with the editorial, and then the editing happens outside of that. That comes after acquisition has been made, and the substantive editor that we'll hire for the book will be somebody that also may share our vision or share the author's vision in particular. Somebody that we feel is just the right person for that book. Now we do have at our press, we do have an in-house editor who works with some of our novelists. His name's Malcolm Sutton, and he has he has his own taste as well, right? So there's certain books that we feel are Malcolm books, and certain books that are not. And so the books that are not, we work from a pool of editors that we can contract, and Hazel and I will think about who might be the right person for the project. And then if that person goes on, then them and the author, the editor and the author, we stay relatively hands off from that entire experience. We're there to support, of course, if there's any questions that come up that need some input from us. We're happy to receive those and be part of the conversation. But we really trust the magic of the editorial relationship. So we try to stay a little hands off in that regard. We like to know if there's been a significant change to the book, if we need to alter like our marketing stuff. So we like to have communication about it all, but we stay relatively hands off with that. And the tools that work.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. Yeah. And I love actually this leads into my next question because I love one point that you made that yes, you have your in-house editor, but sometimes you hire like
Mhm.
outside people from like the team of Book Hawk Press. Is that something that's usual like doing the presses have maybe one or
Mhm.
two in-house editors and then maybe hire freelancers is like that the way that it works
I believe
sometimes?
so.
I believe so,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. I do think that the majority of independent presses do have some in-house editors. Yes, for sure, and that at the same time, it is not uncommon to my knowledge for external freelance editors to be brought in for um, specific projects. Where and when
Right.
needed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And do you hire those editors off of like people that you've met in the industry, or is it like I know that people hire through maybe like sites like where they find editors, but how does that process
Yeah.
work for like BookHawk when you are trying to hire like somebody that's not part of the team, but you need like an editor from
Mhm.
outside of your
That's a
house?
really good question.
Hmm.
And over the years, we've definitely, developed a lot of relationships with editors that we've met in various spaces and places, who've then, reached out to us directly to let us know that, that they do work freelance and that, that they would love to talk to us if there was a future project that they could be the right fit for. So in many cases, that's how those relationships started was just kind of that eventual chance meeting that led to a larger
Yeah,
discussion.
that
Yeah, that
networking.
networking.
Yeah.
And in
Hmm.
other cases, some agents have brought connections to us, people that they know that may have at one time been in house at a different publishing house, but due to, what a variety of reasons, they're no longer in house, but rather working freelance. And an agent has let us know that this person over here is now working freelance and could be a really great editor for you to meet and connect with. And so we again, just through that kind of like pairing that has happened, we've met a few editors along the way that, at least in a couple of cases, have become regular freelancers for us that have worked on now a number of books over the years. So yeah, it's really about kind of like relationship building, and over the years, just that kind of ability to have initially worked on at least a single project that has probably over years developed into more than one project, and now a really great relationship with each other, knowing how each other works. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I bet that's so
Mhm.
important, especially because different presses have like different
Hmm.
voices that they want to publish. So, like working with an editor that understands what your press wants to achieve or the message that you want to like transmit to like the public, I bet
Yeah.
that's so important. Um, and now I want to talk about through movies, through books, what we see of the book editor is like, oh, the book editor is the person in the publishing house that is reading manuscripts all day or is reading from like the slush pile all day, like seeing like what book you want to acquire. But that's actually not true. You don't get to
I know.
read books all day. That's not what happens. So, what are those other kind of like administrative tasks that you have to take care of every day? This one, I want to start with Jade this time, just because, as you said, Hazel, he takes care of like that part of the business.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I mean, like, my list of things today is a pretty decent list, actually. It must be Monday. Um, and so I'm taking care of everything from I'm doing like bookkeeping, uh, keeping track of who I need to pay. I'm managing things like today we received some copy edits back from an author who'd finished going through that. So that needed to go to the designer. We had another person who had gone through their first pages and had sent some notes, so that needs to go back to their designer. So it's kind of like I'm doing a lot of stuff in the background like that. I have to process some orders and pack them up. Yeah, so like there's all kinds of things like this going on in the background at a publishing house. I will say that like I think a lot of people think that publishing works the way that you see it through the lens of Hollywood, which is not
Mhm.
real at all. It is
No, that's not the reality at
and
all.
and everybody
Yeah.
is like really focused on the book, but making the book is actually a very it's a smaller part of what we do. To publish means to make public. So a lot of what Hazel does with the team in terms of marketing, that's a huge part of what we do, because especially in a country like Canada where discoverability is everything, and it's hard to in the shadow of all of the large publishing houses that are here working with branch plans,
Absolutely, yeah.
it's hard to get your book noticed, right?
Mhm.
So we're working very hard to just continue to, um, you know, get the conversation going and keeping it going about all the books that we're doing. So that's a huge part of what we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Is there anything else that you may want to add,
Yeah,
Hazel, to
I
that?
would say that, a sort of a thing that I'm always quite embarrassed to admit, in fact, is how little time there is often left in any workday to sit and read manuscripts. I mean, it seems like the most strange confession to make, but really
Yeah.
the day-to-day work and all, as Jay kind of referenced, like tasks that lie ahead of us each and every day. Often it's, the manuscript that you've got over here, like calling out to you,
Mhm.
please read me, and an agent checking in to ask, have you read that manuscript, et cetera, et cetera. And you're like, I wish I could. I can't get through all the tasks in front of me today.
Yeah.
So it's a definite challenge to keep up with the reading. I wish that weren't the case. I do wish I could sit and read
Mm-hmm.
manuscripts all day.
Absolutely. No, I completely understand that. And is it true? Because I have heard from editors that they say, like most of the time when I read manuscripts, when I have time to read books, it's actually after my
Mm-hmm.
work hours. Like after I'm done for the day is when I sit down and read manuscripts. Is that
That
what
is very
happens?
much
It's
what
very true.
happens.
Yeah.
I try to read a little bit every morning. I do try very hard to dedicate, even if it's 15 or 20 minutes at the start of a day, to read, some pages. I'm not always successful, but it is an intended goal. But otherwise, yes, I would say it's evenings, it's weekends, it's those hours where my inbox isn't filling up all day, or the to-do list that I started for myself at the beginning of the day didn't get thwarted because some other fire erupted and took all of our attention away for the day. So it's just those quieter hours that are away from kind of the work hours, that do lend themselves mostly to reading.
With all the tasks that you are both describing, like, like bookkeeping, marketing, reading manuscripts, acquiring them, everything that you're describing, I bet that, any book editor, any acquisitions editor needs like a while, like skills that they need to have in their toolbox to use every day on their daily task. But off the top of your head, what are like the top five that any book editor, any acquisitions editor might need when like applying to a job in the publisher or at any publisher for that matter? Let's start with Hazel. You can give me five, and then
Yeah.
Jay,
Yeah,
you can
sure.
See
give
if
me
I can
five.
come up with five. I mean, I would say certainly it's a curiosity about what the manuscript holds, what its potentials are, being open to that journey as a reader. But also, I think it's really important to be able to read simultaneously, not only as a reader, but as a potential editor. I mean, I think that's a great skill to sort of almost be reading with two eyes at any given time, and being able to ask along the way, and certainly at the end of the reading, the questions that one needs to ask to ensure that, this manuscript could be a good fit for the list that you're acquiring for. Being able to ask all those necessary questions of, yes, it may be a well written manuscript, but does it do more than that? So for us, that is going back always to our mandate, really thinking about the list that it is we're building, and the voices that we're looking for in the list that we're building, and aligning that with the manuscript, and just asking all the questions and seeing the potential for marketing. Of course, an editor needn't be a marketer, but they must have at least some
like a
Yeah.
mind of a
Or,
marketer a
you know,
little
this
bit.
again might be a
Hmm.
well-written manuscript, but is there a marketing angle for this title to bring it
Hmm.
to market, to make it
Yeah,
public,
yeah,
as Jay
yeah.
said? Is all of that there?
Absolutely.
I think I maybe only gave you four. Um,
I think marketing,
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
curiosity.
I would say
uh
if I was to add to that, it would
yeah.
be, if you were applying
yeah,
to a
absolutely.
certain press, then you need to have a full understanding of what the vision and mandate of that press is,
Mhm.
right? Like if you're interested in editing or working with YA literature, then you would not be a fit at our press.
Mm.
We just don't
Right.
publish that work.
Hmm.
But then
Hmm.
also having a kind of an idea of what the catalog of the press is doing. What are they doing artistically? What are they doing economically? Like those sorts of things, I think, are valuable things to think about when you're applying to a publishing house such as ours. But then the other thing that is also helpful is to kind of be thinking about the larger landscape of
Mhm.
the literary marketplace itself. What are the kinds of books that are people are interested in at this particular moment? What are the conversations that are going on in culture? What are the uh, yeah, those kinds of things. Like I would say something else which
Yeah,
might
just
find like
keeping an eye on
like
trends.
yeah,
Like, yeah, like what is the market
yeah,
consuming?
exactly,
Exactly.
right. Like
Yeah.
how would
Hmm.
if a book that we are picking up, and these are questions that Hazel and I ask in terms of acquisitions, right? Like if
Mhm.
there's a book that we're really interested in for aesthetic reasons, it's a beautifully written book, really interesting. But then we need to ask questions about like, well, what are the other books that are already in the world that this may be in conversation with?
Mhm.
What are the other topics that are like in the news that this might be applicable to? Those sorts of larger things and where a book might fit in would be valuable things for people to be thinking about if they want to go into editorial.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I think all of those are good points and things that I have heard, like learning more about the industry, that yes, you need those skills to be a book editor, or if you're interested in working in editorial, you definitely need like that
Mm.
curiosity or like following the market trends, and like not just if you want to, as you said, Jay, if you want to work, especially like for instance in YA, you need to read YA, right? Like you need to have like a taste
Yeah,
for like the
exactly.
genre that
Yeah.
you want to work in. And for instance, if one wants to apply to be like a book editor or work in editorial in an indie press, in a small press, how can they demonstrate those skills that we're talking about? Do they need a degree for that? Will work experience work when applying for a job? What's your
Mhm.
perspective on that?
I mean, it's a really great question. I think, I mean, yes, any past experience is only going to be
Mm.
helpful to everyone. Um, but, we really believe very much in trying to just ease as many barriers to access to the industry as we possibly can. So there's no time or space that we would ever require, an
Hmm.
educational degree to become an editor. I think, again, it's just it's really, I think, first and foremost, that kind of passion for literature, knowledge of the landscape, someone who reads widely and quite vociferously, and like just has a genuine like interest in literature. I think that like those are skills when I'm not saying you couldn't learn about them in school, but I feel like you
Hmm.
either have don't. Yeah, they're really in your core. So I think that's, something we look for. It's someone who's just really able to kind of like understand that that role of an editor is, of course, it's not to simply correct, what is kind of perhaps missing or
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah, exactly.
needing some extra love, but someone who can understand like that role of helping an author to take that work, transform that work into a new place, to strengthen what is already strong, but make it stronger, right? Having that kind of ability to just understand what their role as an editor would be. And I say that because while most authors, I think, are um, welcoming of the editorial experience, some are very shy of it or find it difficult. I think it's a vulnerable
Hmm.
place for an author to often be in, right? And it does take that kind of editor who brings just a tremendous kind of care and compassion and consideration to the role as well as someone who's got, the ability to sort of say, this is what we should talk about or look at or focus it on in order to kind of, again, take that manuscript to its next place, because it's always just in support of the work, right? It's always in support of the author and their vision of the work.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's so important that you've made that point that as an editor, you also need to learn how to be kind, because when you receive a manuscript and you're like going back with your comments, you're talking to an author that has been working on this
Yeah.
book for years.
Mhm.
You don't know how many years the vision has taken, and they are coming from such a vulnerable place that you need to approach anything that you do
Yes.
with kindness as well. Yeah, I think that's so important. And now I actually want to move on to some practical advice for those hoping to work in the editorial or acquisitions department, as we're talking about. So, the first question, I think I know the answer to, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Should young professionals prepare for a competitive
Mhm.
market on itself for like job applications when going into the acquisitions or editorial
Mhm.
departments?
I mean, the sad truth of the publishing industry is that the number of jobs available in it are quite small.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I think a lot of the programs that people go through, I think that they're geared towards the larger corporate houses. So you do have this idea of like different, very specific divisions of the company that you could work in, whether it's marketing or acquisitions or editorial.
Mhm.
And a smaller house is, you know, those things exist, but they're a bit blurred. And a team like us, like we're a team. Hazel and I are the only full time employees at our company, and then we have a team of five. So we have three
Mhm.
part time people that are working for us, and we want to grow that, but it's going to take some work to grow it,
Mhm.
right? So, and I think a lot of companies our size are in a similar situation.
Mhm.
So yes, very competitive.
And talking about that, when people, they submit their cover letters, they submit their
Mhm.
resumes, especially both of you that, as you said, you have part-time people that you're
Mhm.
working with. What is it that stands out to you the most when people like submit their cover letters or their resumes, if they want to work with you? What are those like little details that you say like, oh, I'm interested about like talking more to
Yeah.
this person?
I mean, I think for us, something that we, hope to see in a cover letter would be a genuine um, person who has perhaps been following the press or is aware of the press, has read some of our books, can kind of speak to that. What about working at an independent publisher is exciting to them? The types of literature that they're very interested in. Providing not only maybe some reading examples, certainly from hopefully our list, but other independent publishers in Canada as well, just to sort of demonstrate that, love of reading, because I think that whatever area a person wants to work in publishing,
Mhm.
if you cannot demonstrate very clearly and easily your love of reading, like your love of books, then that's going to come through. We have had some letters in the
Absolutely.
past, some query letters
Mhm.
that have essentially told us that they don't really know anything about the publishing house, but are we hiring?
Oh no.
So
That's
that's
exactly
about
what you don't want to
exactly
hear.
definitely
Yeah.
no. But
Yeah.
someone who, has really taken the time to like look at the landscape again, because it is as competitive as it is. You want to sort of do that research, really understand who the houses are out there, what it is that they're doing at the publishing house, because particularly true of independent presses is everyone has their real areas of specialization, like the areas and the genres that they specialize in. So taking the time to
Mhm.
really understand what that is, check out some of the books, um, and communicate that in the letter, I think is what's going to really stand out to us to say, hey, I really want to talk more to this person.
Mhm.
And when people are applying to these jobs, for instance, I know like for the design department, they definitely need a
Mm.
portfolio. For the editorial acquisitions department, is a portfolio important, like showing that they can write in like different types of writing, or that they can like as you said, have like that eye for curiosity, that they know what they're talking about, especially in the genre that they are working for. Is that, should that show in the portfolio that they are
Yeah, I would say
presenting?
so. I mean,
Mhm.
because of the kind of blurring of things here, then yes, sometimes people might be
Mhm.
called on to write different kinds of
Mhm.
texts. You know, like it might be marketing text. It might be, you know, something more grant orientated. You know, like there. So yeah, having some flexibility in that and being able to demonstrate it is great. Um, yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, and I would say, like, one thing I'm wanting to stress too for anyone kind of looking to work in editing is to be open to the reality, most likely reality, that it won't be tomorrow that you're necessarily a lead editor on a book
Hmm.
for, but there will be opportunities to perhaps shadow a lead editor, really kind of learn under them in kind of a mentor mentee type role. Um, but there's probably earlier on a lot of opportunity for proofreading or even copy editing, kind of those um, steps that will only expand their skill and knowledge and um, know how, and to eventually maybe being brought on as a lead editor, right? Um, it's just a reality that it is one of those skills, I think, that just gets strengthened over
Hmm.
time with more kind of like opportunity to um, learn from others who are already doing it in whatever kind of capacity might be available through the publishing house. But
Hmm.
it does it's we try to be as transparent as we can. That's something we're really committed to at Book Hug, is to just be as open and transparent as possible, and that it's like it will take time to become that kind of lead editor, but in an assistant role, um, in a shadowing
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
for
role
sure.
early on, you get that
Exactly. Yeah.
experience.
I
Yeah.
think Hazel and I were both huge proponents of learning by doing.
Mm-hmm.
As people who came into this business without, any formal education in how publishing operates or whatever. I don't even think those programs existed
I
I
don't think
when I got started. Right? It's more of a more phenomenon. Yeah. So yeah, like the more that you can do
Mhm.
uh, and have those experiences that you can put on your CV, then the better,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, I would. Yeah, and that kind of strange. I know that education is really important. I mean, I have 3 degrees. I think education is wonderful, but the kind of strange expectation of like finishing a degree and that's going to mean a job, a specific job, is not really a reality.
Well, it should be
It
better than
should
it
be
No, it's
better
is.
not the
than it
It
case.
should
is,
be.
It
but
should, yeah, it should, that
It
definitely
yeah,
should
should
change.
change, but
But the
yeah.
expectation, I know in the industry, is like also having a little bit of
Yeah,
work
yeah, yeah.
experience that you can.
definitely. Again, it has everything to do with what you earlier referenced, of just the reality that it is quite a competitive marketplace. So I think it comes with
Absolutely.
just having some flexibility and within the the goals, not to say ever
Yeah.
abandon the goal. If the ultimate goal is to be a lead
No.
editor one day,
Hmm.
a senior editor
Yeah.
somewhere, then, but I think
Mhm.
the reality is it's,
Just
yeah,
expect that it's
it's
gonna
a
take
bit
a little bit more
gradual
time.
before you'll
Hmm.
probably
Yeah.
become the senior editor anywhere.
Hmm. No, that makes sense. And I actually, the last question before we finish this section is, I want to ask, especially when it comes to like that curiosity
Mhm.
that you were describing, Hazel, that having that kind of eye for a genre, people who want to work in the editorial industry, how can they practice those skills, even if they don't have a job at the moment? Will it be true as what you were saying, like read a book but kind of try to have like
Yeah.
that editor's eye to it, or what else would you recommend to like kind of start training your mind to like think as an
Yeah.
editor?
I think, I mean, of course, besides your own just reading, something that, at least at small presses, because we are also overworked, and we've already kind of spoken about how, in reality,
Hmm.
often reading is the time that is the least available. Um, being in touch with a publishing house to say, like, is there any role that I could even read through your submissions? Um, just getting that kind of experience again of like being able to read a submission with the kind of clear information available to them that the publishing house would be kind of looking for information about regarding anyone's submission, being able to sort of complete a reader's report, if you will, about a manuscript, and giving that over to the publishing house to then um, decide internally whether the manuscript answers the questions that they're looking for, and whether there would be reason to move the manuscript up the chain of consideration, or if the that sort of early reader report would perhaps demonstrate that maybe this isn't quite a manuscript for this publishing house. So that's sort of one way to gain some like early experience. Again, like, strengthening kind of your reading skill of, again, reading as a reader, but also be able to read with an eye toward potential acquisitions and editorial. And the experience of being able to kind of write all of that out in a report is one way that
No,
comes to
absolutely.
mind for me. I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, yeah. Because I'm sort of thinking about how acquisitions work here, which is we do receive a lot of submissions from agents those come directly to Hazel and I. Hazel and I are also kind of like paying attention to the landscape, and we have authors that we've worked with over time that we're checking in with to see if they're working on anything new. So there's sort of like the more house author that also will submit to us. But then we have our what we call the slush pile. These are things we open up the submission portal, people submit them. We don't know who they are or where they're coming from most of the time, and that would be a great place if people were willing to come and have experience reading and writing reports on those. That is one thing. But another thing that actually comes to my mind is like writing groups. There are many writing groups in places, and these are writers that get together to workshop their novels or their books. And what is often missing in those places is somebody who's kind of like just a reader, who might just give like editorial feedback to people as they're developing their projects. So volunteering, if you can find those writing groups, and you could just say like, hey, I'd like to join this writing group, but I'm not writing. I want to just read and provide editorial feedback. That could also be another way.
Or even just being available to anyone within that writing group
Sure.
who is looking to work with an editor. Perhaps they're readying a manuscript for submission. Perhaps they've had some beta readers within their writing group, or other friends, colleagues, etc. But now they actually would like an editorial eye on it before they begin submitting it, and that's a great place to begin. Working directly with a writer on that sort of pre-submission edit can be quite powerful. In fact, this weekend we had an author reach out to us, not in terms of a manuscript, but in terms of an essay she was commissioned to write for a popular literary journal here in Canada. And she was like, I'm just, before I send it to them, I'm looking to hire someone that could do an editorial pass. So I think that there is a lot of potential opportunity there.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great idea. And you're right, Jay. I think that at the beginning, what writers are often looking for is just like those initial readers that can give different perspectives, and that definitely will train your eye as an editor. I think that's a great idea. Okay, well, it's time for a fun break for both of you because I've asked you a lot of questions. So here's a fun break for both of you. This is our literary rapid fire quiz. You don't have to think too much about it. You can answer as quickly as possible, and we can go like one can start and then the other can start. Okay, favorite book genre?
Favorite book genre at the moment is literature and translation.
Literary fiction.
Perfect. Go-to author?
My go-to reading at this particular moment is this place called Standard Editions, which is an ebook. They take public domain texts and they make really good ebooks out of them that are free to download and read. So you can find all kinds of interesting things there.
Definitely go-to author is Joan Didion. I've been recently revisiting all of her books. Every now and then I just get a need to reread the White Album or switching. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just need to do that. There's something about the way that Didion particularly crafted sentences that just fascinates me to no end, and I need to revisit them regularly. So I've just come through a revisit of, but also Shirley Jackson is another go-to author for me.
That's very nice. Okay, best book format: hardcover, paperback, ebook, or
Paperback.
audiobook.
Paperback.
Perfect. Buy or borrow books?
I would say equal for me. I'm a
Okay,
huge,
both.
huge user
Okay.
of the library.
Yeah, same for me.
One book that you wish you could read for the first time.
The Bell Jar.
I would say it's a collection of poetry called The Sonnets by Ted Berrigan.
Reading beverage: tea or coffee?
Coffee for me.
Tea for me.
Perfect. Are you a morning reader or a night reader?
Morning reader.
I'm a bookend reader. I like to read in the morning and I like to read before I go to sleep.
Are you a fast or a slow reader?
I'm a slow reader.
I've become a slow reader.
And the last one: if you could recommend any book to anyone listening, what would it be?
Such a good
You know,
question.
a great book that I read recently was a book called The Colony, which is it's a translation from Sweden. It's just a really fascinating story about this group of people, the real oddball characters that end up living in a kind of off-grid, outside of society kind of thing. I thought it was a great book.
Oh, it's such a good question. And of course, it feels almost impossible to answer. But the book that came to mind, so I'm going to go with that, is The Years by Annie Ernaux. Just a stunning, gorgeous, sumptuous, exquisite book.
Well, we're almost at the end of the interview, so we just have a short Q&A from the community. What they say is, what are some common misunderstandings that people have about like the editorial or acquisitions department that you might have heard of before?
Yeah.
I mean, I just keep going back to, how Hollywood has ruined it for everybody by this idea
Yes.
of like how an editor works. They're on call 24/7 to their author. These sorts of things, I think are huge misconceptions.
I think too, just if not a misconception, just like a reality that because there's just so many points of intersection in a publishing house. So, it's one thing to edit a really great manuscript, but again, it's so important to be in conversation with the marketing team, the publicity team, and like everyone just needs to be able to like develop a shared understanding and vision for the book, which is always in support of the author's vision of the book, and understanding that collectively it's that teamwork across departments to facilitate that vision. So I feel sometimes like Hollywood might make it look like it's just an author editor, but there's just it takes a village,
There's
right?
more.
To publish a book.
Absolutely. They also ask, what are some difference between working at an indie press and a big house? I know that you're an indie press, but what are some things that you've noticed between like both of those houses? Like,
well,
what's
I mean,
different?
interestingly, neither Hazel of I nor I have worked at a large house, so we don't really know how that works.
We have a lot
of friends that
have worked
there. So like our understanding of it is that things are very, very specific to your role when you're working at one of the larger houses.
I see.
I've heard stories about like you just go to your cubicle every day and you just study these spreadsheets or like whatever your task is. It's a much more focused, very specific task
to your role. Yeah, what they hire you is exactly what you do.
Whereas at a smaller house like us, I think there's a lot more room to be doing all kinds of things and to have witness and be a part of the larger team that's going to support the book. That's my answer.
Perfect. Yeah.
No, I would say exactly that.
Okay, great. And the last Q&A that we have is, when you're considering to acquire a manuscript, what are kind of those first things that you look for?
I mean, we always start with the language. Like we always start with the writing itself. And then from there we're asking questions about like, does this need to be published? I think becomes a bit of a question. Like, is this a vital piece of the conversation that's going on in culture?
Absolutely.
how can we market this book becomes another question. So like
Yeah.
it always starts with the art, but then sort of moves out into these secondary questions about how it can fit into the landscape. Will booksellers be interested in this book? Will they want to stock this book? What are some of the talking points that we can, present to the world so that we can instill or we can encourage the conversation that this book will be a part of? Those are the kinds of things that we're thinking about. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I think exactly that. Again, like we've read many, many well-written manuscripts over time that unfortunately don't have an easy marketing angle or feel very hermetic, like without a great or obvious kind of opening for a reader to actually enter that text and feel that they are welcomed into that text, So those are the things we're also looking for. I mean, we could read something that is beautifully written, but that doesn't have all of that. But so then the should this be published question becomes a real discussion in house, because we have to be able to answer all those other questions, or else it feels like a very, very much a vanity project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we don't ask those
Absolutely.
questions,
Yeah.
then we're just making a book.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes total sense. Well, Hazel and Jay, thank you so much for joining us. This conversation was so insightful, and I know a lot of people are going to appreciate it. Not only we talked about acquisitions and editorial, but we also had like a peek of what it is to work on a small press. So thank you so much. But before we wrap up, where can listeners follow Book Hawk Press and like learn more about the books that you're publishing?
Wonderful. Well, we invite everyone to visit certainly our website, which is just bookhugpress.ca, or please follow us on the socials, always at Book Hug Press. We're on Instagram, TikTok,
Blue
no
Sky.
longer on X, but we are over there on Blue Sky trying to figure out what Blue Sky is. And of course, for the people that are still on Facebook, we're there too.
Oh, that's great. And one last thing for many people listening, probably they are at the beginning of their careers, they're struggling to find their place in the industry. And I know that after a few rejections, that can be really tough. So, can you both share some encouraging words for those people who are trying to break into the industry but are having a tough time now? Let's start with Jay.
I just want to encourage people that the publishing landscape is a really it's a wild and weird industry. Like it is, like Hazel said at the beginning, it is constantly in flux. It is not static. It is wild. So if you don't find yourself fitting in somewhere, I would always encourage somebody to think about, how would you do this? How would you go about building a company? How would you, there is a bit of there's been a shrinkage in terms of publishing in Canada in the past 15 or 20 years. There's been a few companies that have closed their doors, and it's a very hard business to get started in. But I mean, I found it to be a very exciting and rewarding experience to do it all. Certainly a challenge, but I encourage people to think about what's missing in the industry. Where could they fill in the voids that are there? I think that's a good place to encourage people. Yeah.
I mean, I would also encourage people. I know that for many, probably most people, a staff position is the ultimate goal, the dream. But being that a lot of publishers do have quite constrained budgets at the end of the day, if there's an openness or willingness to consider working freelance, I think that just opens up a lot of possibilities. Of course, it's, working freelance has its own special challenges, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But to consider that at least as an option, and for other people who maybe are really, really determined, yes, to work in editorial, but if there's a possibility of working over here in sales data or marketing,
Yeah, just
yeah,
starting somewhere
perhaps just
else.
being
Yeah.
open to like that door that could open to you in the publishing industry, that it does not to say that there wouldn't be a day that another position would open up in a different part of publishing, maybe the one you hope to be in. But if there's an opportunity there, I would say seize it if your heart is feels compelled to do that, because you're still in the industry and you would still be working with all of the people
With
from the
different
book.
people,
Yeah.
yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you both for those encouraging words. I think people are going to appreciate it. So we've gotten to the end of our interview. So thank you both so much. This was such an incredible conversation. Thank you for
Thank
Yeah,
you
well,
joining us
thank you
so
for
today.
having us. It
much.
was
Thank you. It
lovely.
was really lovely.
And that's it for today's episode. Next episode, we're going to be joined by Sanna Wani from Between the Lines. So make sure to follow and subscribe so you don't miss that episode. You can also visit our website, publishingguide.com, for free resources and more information about this season's guest. Follow us on Instagram at The Publishing Guide for updates and behind the scenes content. As always, please note that any views expressed in this podcast are personal and do not reflect the opinions of the host or guest employers. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.